I just thought I'd start on a general note with the four panelists and ask a sort of more general philosophical question, which is who or what is really being served by history programs, whether they have inside their own philosophies and ideas of what their overall, whether they have an overall mission, an overall sense of the importance or the role that history programs play in our society. And I thought I would ask that, just throw it out to all four, because people have a whole range of motivations, from wanting to earn their supper to very lofty ideas of what they're doing. So I thought I'd just start with Charles and move down the row.
Sure. I think the history programming plays really a vital role in giving viewers who choose to come to history programming as they're watching television at night some perspective on how we got to where we are, why we are the way we are, and also to really give possibility of an informed speculation about what the future might bring. I know for the History Channel audience, they're really coming to us for factual information and to be informed. There's a lot of straightforward entertainment out there, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of television. But there are a large number of viewers that are seeking, I think, a more information-rich environment in which to watch at night, and the History Channel provides that.
Yeah, well, I just happened to see in the New York Times the other day a study was done of high school students. I don't know if any of you saw it. It was just jaw-dropping how little American students know about our history. They couldn't identify Adolf Hitler. They thought he might have been some clerk. I mean, really, it was or the Kaiser. It was, they didn't know the most basic facts about American history or literature. It was just sort of shocking. This study, these assessments are done periodically, and I think it is frightening to see, to some degree, how little history is actually being taught in schools. A lot of it is thematic, and you might investigate, say, like immigration or something, but you don't really have necessarily a context for it. And so we hope that with the things we do that we at least provide factual information, certainly, and put it in a sort of compelling manner so that people will watch it and be entertained and also learn at the same time, and have a sense that history is not just something that happened a long time ago, that's something you read about in a book if you're really motivated to memorize names and dates, but it actually has a story that has meaning for us today, so that you can understand your life in the continuum of who we've been. And we pick individual particular subjects and sort of tack at it from different perspectives. So there's no one program we've done that can really do everything, but in the aggregate over time, we can accumulate quite a lot of different perspectives on the American story, which is what we've been focused on.
So since you guys took the high road, and I can continue to take the high road, but there was the question of, who does it serve? And I,
right.
If I'd gone first, I would have said those things too. But since those are things that have been said, I'll talk about how it serves the filmmakers.
Right.
In the sense that, well, why are we doing this? Yes, I mean, we certainly feel history is important, and that's how most Americans out of school are getting their education. But when I got into this business, I got into it, like MUFFIE, in the cinema verite age.
Yeah.
There wasn't any history programming on. There were history programs, but there wasn't really an opportunity there. And the excitement in the '60s was in you could follow Kennedy around with a camera. I remember seeing that film and saying, "Oh my God, you could take a camera out and follow somebody around." I mean, that's hard to imagine today because everybody has a little camera they run around.
Because we're all being followed by cameras now.
But back then, the camera had just come off of the tripod and got onto people's shoulders, and you could do sync sound that way. You didn't have to have that, those old. I mean, I grew up with the camera was on the tripod. You went to school, and the kid came up from the AV class, and you were in 4th grade, and he was in 5th grade, and he put the thing on. This is Shell Oil
Yeah.
film since the dawn of civilization. Mankind has gone down to the sea. And it got about that far, and then the film sort of fell apart.
Yeah, it broke. It usually broke.
So to see that other stuff, it was really exciting, and I think you guys might not realize how exciting it was. But it was very hard to continue to make those films because you couldn't tell people who had money how they were going to turn out, how they were going to end. And it got to be so that you could write a grant and say, well, you know, I could do a film about FDR, let's say, because I know the whole story. And what was amazing was no one had done these films. Like, I did a film about Napoleon. Nobody had done a film, biography of Napoleon. There are more books about him than anybody that ever lived, but there was no, because this was such a new thing. And so, and I loved the opportunity to do it, don't get me wrong, but I learned how to be a cameraman first, and MUFFIE was an editor of Cinema Verite. So we're the old timers, that's why we can say these things. So anyway, there's more to be said about it, but basically there came this shift where you could begin to get funds from the NEH, and you could, you know, write a grant and get the films, and none of these things had been done. And so suddenly there was a shift, and you could actually do it. So this is an important thing to do, and we could continue to talk about that too. But I just did it in the.
This is the other side of the.
So Muffy could probably pick that up.
You could synthesize them.
Well,
Well,
take the
I
high
say,
notes.
yeah. I was going to even go lower and say that seconding everything everybody has said and feeling like there isn't a whole lot more for me to say, except that history is, the one great thing about making history films is they're really good stories. You know, they have, you can find in because you can select a moment in history, and there are so many moments to select, you can find a story that has a beginning, a middle, something of a climax and an end, and it makes a really good film. And so I think that's one of the great appeals. The other great appeal, I think, is also what everybody's been saying, is that there is this, I always find it, even though I've made tons of these films, incredibly exciting line between the past and the present. And you can really see where things, you know, the strains of where they started. And as you said, why we are the way we are comes very clear with history. And you see that we're, in the case of American history, we continue to battle the same old battles over and over and over again. And it's interesting.
Actually, it reminds me of what I once read. One of those, I don't know if it's true, but I think it was Zhou Enlai is supposed to have said when he was asked what he thought about the French Revolution, and he said it's too early to tell. And what you said made me think that about the American Revolution.
Yeah.
It's too early to tell, especially if you're a historian.
I was talking with a cab driver, the same cab driver I was talking about before today, and he was talking about he came from Romania, about the Roman Empire. And he was saying, yeah, and Rome fell. I wonder when the United States is going to fall.
Well, of course, one of the thoughts I've heard, because I lived in Europe for a while, was that Europe has too much history and America doesn't have enough. So maybe that's another one of those things. But anyways, how much, let me ask you this. You talk about going to do history programs and finding stories at work for a filmmaker. But how much do you now sort of put onto yourself that you're actually looking for some sort of objective truth? Or is it, because there's quite a relativist sense that, history can be any interpretation you want. So what are you, what's your own take on that when you're starting off on a topic? Are you do you have sort of other kinds of standards you're imposing on yourself? Are you going to bring us the truth from the past? Is that something you do? Or is it just, we can twist it this way and make it great?
I think that I think about this a lot, and as we probably all do. And I think that the thing about documentaries in general, and history films particularly, is that one is trying to arrive at a truth as one sees it. And it is always interpretation, and it is always from your point of view, from this point in time.
and probably unduly influenced by, history is very much a matter of fashion, and one can't help but be in one's own time period influenced by what people are interested in, whether it's women's history or whether it's taking into account various things. So that's true. I often like to say that fiction films try in a fictionalized form try and be as real as possible, get the actors to act as real as possible, to get at a kind of a truth. And we work with the stuff of what happened, and you try not to alter that. And you select to try and get at the same kind of truth. You're just starting from different material.
I think it's, we talk about this a lot because everyone wants to know how can you be objective, and we always say you can't. Yeah. That we never pretend to be objective, and that the whole notion of objectivity in any kind of creative process is impossible, because everything you do, you're making choices. Even if you don't think you have a point of view, you're choosing which picture to look at, who to interview, what to ask them, what choice of words, what stories to leave in, what to leave out. I mean, you have to structure this raw material into something. And we try to approach a subject with pretty much of an open mind, not having a thesis to prove, for example. So we wouldn't begin a project knowing how it's going to end. And we'd be open to including a lot of points of view. We bring in historians who really advise us. We read lots of books from different perspectives, and we try to synthesize and represent different points of view within the film, so that we're not sort of marching our way down a path that we've already determined before we start. That being said, we make choices all the time, and it ends up being things that we like, things that maybe make the film more complicated and less obvious, and add tension and complexity. And so in the end, there is some point of view, but I would be hard-pressed to really define what it is, but it's absolutely not objective by any stretch of the imagination. And nor is any historian sifting through the relics of the past trying to come up with an interpretation of it. It is interpretive by its very nature. And so we just hope that our interpretation will hold the audience's interest and provoke a conversation. That's about as far as we would go.